hopefully you're all ready to do a little thinking because, well, as I mentioned, we have a dance within Judaism about Shabbat and Sukkot, but we also have a dance within the holiday of Sukkot itself. Sukkot is known for two primary mitzvahs that are most famous. One of them, of course, is dwelling in the sukkah. We have our booth, our tabernacle, out back here, but of course, hopefully you've also built one at home. If not, please feel free to come by anytime during the week and use the one that's in our back as part of the Temple Israel amenities for everyone. The other, of course, main mitzvah for Sukkot is the shaking of the lulav, exactly. And we will not be doing that on Shabbat because we don't shake the lulav on Shabbat lest we come to carry it, but we will be doing that on Sunday morning, and I hope everybody will be joining us for that as well. But there is a third element for Sukkot, a third aspect of Sukkot that we sometimes overlook in our hustle and bustle of building the sukkah and in of our attempt to get our proper lulav all nice and together, and that's rejoicing. The actual holiday of Sukkot is known as Hey Chag, which means it is the festival. This is supposed to be the pinnacle of happiness that we have throughout the entire year. Historically, of course, this was the time of harvest, much like in the American culture where we have Thanksgiving, which was a time of bounty and plenty when you could stuff yourself silly, and many people still stuff themselves silly. Sukkot was a time where we could relax from our agricultural labor for a little while, enjoy the fresh food that had just been harvested, and also that needed to be eaten because some of it was not going to be preserved very well, and it was better in your stomach than it was just rotting away. That meant Sukkot was supposed to be a great time of rejoicing. But I can tell you from personal experience and conversation with so many people that there is absolutely a conflict, a tension between spending time in the sukkah and being happy. Not everybody enjoys sitting in a makeshift hut in your backyard or in your driveway or out in the back driveway of your synagogue. In Florida in particular, you have to contend with the various bugs that will want to eat you while you eat your meals. You also have to contend with the oppressive heat and humidity depending upon the year. Today was one of the nicer first day of Sukkot that we've had for a while. But even then, the big one always comes into play in Florida, which is as my family and I were coming in to prepare to come to services, having just finished our dinner in the sukkah, little tiny raindrops began to fall. It held out just long enough for us to eat our meal in peace, but it was no surprise that it would begin raining during Sukkot. This seems to be almost guaranteed when you live here in Florida. So what do you do if you need to dwell in the sukkah and you also need to be happy, and being wet or being eaten by bugs or sweating your head off like you're in a sauna doesn't mean being in the sukkah is not going to be much fun. How do you square this paradox?
You visit, you say your blessings, and
so first night, and first night only, if it would otherwise not be a very nice place, but still safe, don't go out in the sukkah in a hurricane, then we go out, we say Kiddush, we say Motzi, and then we run back inside. No problem. But what about the rest of the holiday? Do we just abandon the booth? Do we just retreat indoors because to be out in that sukkah a little longer is just going to make me miserable? Isn't the mitzvah of sukkah greater than the mitzvah of rejoicing? How would we figure out? How do we balance this part of the equation? How do we even begin to calculate which might be considered the more primary activity? Well, there is a general rule in Judaism. For something that is common and something that is not as common, the more common thing takes priority. Everybody follow that logic? I'll give you a quick example. On a normal weekday, we would wear a talit, our prayer shawl, of course, and we would wear tefillin. Which do we put on first? The talit. Why? Because we wear the talit more often than we wear tefillin. We wear a talit every day of the week, but we only wear tefillin 6 days of the week. Therefore, talit moves up on the slot of priority because it is the more common. Remember, Judaism celebrates the mundane. It doesn't celebrate novelty at the expense of the mundane. So, the holiday of Sukkot, which is the more common mitzvah? What are we asked to do more? Are we asked to spend more time in the sukkah, or are we asked to spend more time rejoicing? Rejoicing. Rejoicing is a command for the holiday that is 24/7. It is the entire period of Sukkot, as opposed to dwelling in the sukkah, which we are supposed to treat as though the sukkah was our house. We treat the sukkah like our house. Now, does anyone here spend 24/7 in your house all the time? The fact that you are currently sitting here tells me no. You've left your house and braved Florida to come to services. So clearly, you are aware that you're not always there, and you probably also go to work. You might also go to school. You might also go out shopping or do any of the other wonderful things we do outside of our homes. The house is not a 24/7 occupation. Thus, when we have to decide between should I be happy or should I be in the sukkah, we will err on the side of happiness more often than we will err on the side of being in the sukkah. Again, for the very, very first mitzvah of being in the sukkah, at least that one time, that first night, then yes, we should try to be out there for the minimum amount of saying the Kiddush and saying the Motzi. But for the rest of the holiday, do what makes you happy. Build your sukkah. You don't get out of it that easy. Build your sukkah. Spend time in it when you're feeling up to it. Spend time to it when the weather permits, when the bugs permit. Make your sukkah as comfortable as possible. But remember that Sukkot is meant to be a time of rejoicing and happiness. Find ways that you can be happy and rejoice. Invite people over, and even if you are not spending as much time in the sukkah as you could, at least spend time with your friends. Do the things that you like. Take a little tiyul, a little trip out into the countryside to enjoy the world that the Sukkot holiday reminds us to appreciate so much. There are so many things we can do during this holiday time. So, find your happiness. Remember, this is a window of opportunity that only comes around once a year. And while we can be happy at other times, it's a little easier because we move it higher in our priorities. I know it sounds strange to imagine that God is commanding us to be happy, but I think all of us know that from time to time, many of us leave our own happiness far down the list of our priorities. And Sukkot tells us, move it up to the top. With that, I will bid you all a Shabbat Shalom and Chag Sameach.
Shabbat Shalom.
And you'll notice, of course, the Shabbat comes first before the Chag because Shabbat comes more often than the Chag. So in the usual greeting, we like to put the Shabbat mentioned first. What's that? Moadim l'simcha is actually, now we're getting really technical, Moadim l'simcha is actually the preferred greeting during the intermediary days of the holiday. So since the first and second day are Yom Tov holidays, where we have our special prayers and special services, like we'll be doing tonight, tomorrow, and Sunday, then we do Chag Sameach for that day. But in between, meaning this year from Sunday night all the way through Friday, then they are what we call Chol HaMoed. They are the regular-ish days of the holiday week. And then Moadim L'Simcha is one of the classic greetings during that window of time to remind us that even the regular days of Sukkot should still be filled with joy. Any other questions, comments? Excellent. Well, certainly we'll have more time after services if there's more on your mind.